What if the silence after they left isn't just emptiness, but a language you haven't learned to speak yet? You feel it, don't you? That cavernous space where their laughter used to echo, where their presence hummed, now filled with a quiet so profound it feels deafening, a physical weight pressing down on your chest, stealing your breath in shallow gasps, leaving you adrift in an ocean of what-ifs and if-onlys, each wave crashing over you, pulling you further under the surface of grief until you wonder if you'll ever find the light again, if the sun will ever warm your skin in the same way, if joy is a feeling you'll ever truly know again, or if you are forever marked by this chasm, this raw, gaping wound that refuses to close, a constant, aching reminder of what was, what should have been, what will never be again. And in those darkest moments, usually when the world outside is asleep and the house is still, save for the frantic beating of your own heart and the quiet drip of tears on your pillow, you might even question everything, the very fabric of reality, the purpose of it all, the fairness, the unfairness, the cruel twist of fate that brought you here, alone with this overwhelming quiet, this silence that screams louder than any noise ever could, a constant, high-pitched frequency of pain that only you can hear. A secret frequency that isolates you even when you're surrounded by well-meaning people offering platitudes that feel like empty air, words that bounce off the hard shell grief has formed around you, unable to penetrate the fortress built of sorrow and unanswered questions. Questions you scream into the void, into that silence, but receive no reply, just the echo of your own voice, a lonely sound in the vast emptiness, and it's in this desolation, this feeling of being utterly lost and abandoned, that a hidden truth begins to reveal itself. A shocking principle of pain that nobody tells you about when you're navigating the initial shock. The principle that the deepest silence holds the most profound revelations, that it's not a void to be filled or feared, but a sacred space, a crucible where transformation, if you allow it, can begin, a space where the noise of the world, the demands of others, and even the frantic noise of your own panicked mind are quieted enough for something else, something ancient and wise, to finally be heard. And you might miss it if you're too busy trying to escape the quiet, to numb the ache, to pretend it isn't there, because the secret is that the silence isn't the absence of them, but the presence of something new. Something you need to attune yourself to, like learning to listen to the faintest whisper in a raging storm. And I remember sitting there, in the quiet of my own home after the world shifted on its axis, feeling like a ghost in my own life, watching the dust motes dance in the sunlight that somehow dared to keep shining, thinking, how does the world keep spinning when mine has stopped? The air felt thin, the colors muted, the sounds distant, and the silence was a living entity, heavy and suffocating, and for a long time, I just existed within it, numb, robotic, going through the motions of living because the body somehow remembered how, even when the soul felt shattered into a million irreparable pieces, and the pain was a constant companion, a dull, throbbing ache in my chest that would sometimes flare into a sharp, incapacitating agony, a reminder with every breath that this was real, this was permanent, and there was no going back to the before, no rewind button, no magic fix, just this now, this painful, silent now, and I tried everything to make the silence go away, to fill the space, to escape the feeling, but the harder I tried, the louder the silence seemed to become, amplifying the echoes of memories, both beautiful and heartbreaking, each one a tiny, exquisite torture, and I wrestled with the whys, the endless cycle of questioning that offered no answers, only deeper layers of pain, asking God, the universe, anyone who might be listening, why this? Why them? Why me? The silence felt like God's silence too, a terrifying absence of divine comfort when I needed it most, leaving me feeling utterly alone in the wilderness of my grief, doubting everything I had ever believed, wondering if faith was just a crutch for the weak, if prayer was just talking to yourself, if there was any benevolent force guiding the chaos, or if we were all just random particles colliding in a meaningless universe. And it was in this rock bottom of spiritual despair, in the deepest part of the silent abyss, that the first subtle shift occurred, so quiet I almost missed it, a faint whisper beneath the roar of my own pain, a gentle nudge that didn't come from outside, but from within, a knowing that wasn't logical or explainable, but felt profoundly true, and that's the first insight the silence holds, a shocking truth. The silence is not God's absence, but His invitation. An invitation to a different kind of conversation, one that happens not in booming pronouncements or instantaneous fixes, but in the quiet spaces, in the stillness of a sunrise you didn't think you'd live to see, in the unexpected kindness of a stranger, in the fragile beauty of a flower pushing through concrete, in the quiet rhythm of your own heart stubbornly beating, a conversation that requires a different kind of listening, a listening with the soul, not just the ears, a tuning into the subtle whispers of divine presence that were always there, just drowned out by the noise of life, and the pain, while excruciating, becomes a catalyst for this new level of awareness. It strips away the superficial, the distractions, forcing you into a raw, unfiltered state where you are finally capable of hearing the quiet, steady voice of the divine, not answering your whys with explanations, but with a presence that says, "I am with you in this," a presence that doesn't remove the pain but somehow makes it bearable, infusing it with a strange kind of grace, and you begin to understand that the silence is not a punishment, but a sacred pause, a liminal space between what was and what is yet to be, a space where true spiritual growth happens, not in comfort, but in the crucible of suffering, where the dross is burned away and the gold of your spirit is refined. And this leads to the second crucial insight, a hidden mechanism of healing. Grief is not a linear journey to getting over it, but a cyclical process of integration. You don't just move on from loss, you learn to carry it, to weave it into the fabric of who you are becoming, and the silence is where this weaving happens, where the sharp edges of sorrow are gradually softened, not by forgetting, but by remembering with love rather than just pain, where the memories, once triggers for tears, become bittersweet treasures, cherished moments that speak not of absence, but of the enduring power of connection, the connection that transcends physical presence, the invisible threads of love that bind us across dimensions. And the pain principles here are profound. Pain demands to be felt, not suppressed. Trying to bypass the pain, to intellectualize it, to rush the process, is a grave warning sign that you are resisting the very healing the silence offers. The silence forces you to confront the pain, to sit with it, to allow it to move through you like a tide, sometimes gentle, sometimes a tsunami, but always moving, and the integration happens not in actively trying to heal, but in allowing yourself to be held in the silence, to be present with whatever arises, the sadness, the anger, the guilt, the unexpected moments of peace, the sudden bursts of laughter at a shared memory. It's all part of the tapestry, and the silence provides the quiet loom upon which this new self, this self that has known profound loss and yet continues to breathe, is being woven, stronger, perhaps, more compassionate, certainly, and carrying a depth you wouldn't trade, even for the absence of pain, because you understand now that the pain carved out a space within you, a sacred cavity that can now hold a greater capacity for love, for empathy, for understanding the fragility and preciousness of life, and the silence teaches you to listen not only to the whispers of the divine, but to the whispers of your own heart, to the needs of your own soul, which brings us to the third hidden secret of the silence. The silence forces you into radical self-compassion. In the relentless noise of the world, you can often ignore your own suffering, put on a brave face, push through, but the silence strips away your defenses, leaving you vulnerable and exposed. And in that vulnerability, you are faced with the raw truth of your own pain, your own exhaustion, your own brokenness, and for perhaps the first time, you have no choice but to look at yourself with kindness, to acknowledge the immense weight you are carrying, to give yourself permission to not be okay, to not have all the answers, to simply be human in your suffering. And this self-compassion is not self-pity. It is a powerful act of self-preservation, a recognition that you are deserving of tenderness and care, especially from yourself. And the pain principle here is clear. Resistance to pain prolongs suffering. Acceptance of pain, not resignation to it, but a gentle acknowledging of its presence, is the first step towards its eventual softening, and the silence provides the gentle container for this acceptance, allowing you to simply be with your pain without judgment, without the pressure to fix it or hide it. You learn to speak kindly to the grieving parts of yourself, the parts that feel lost and afraid, offering them the comfort and understanding you desperately seek from others but can ultimately only find within, a comfort that echoes the divine presence you are learning to hear in the quiet, a mirroring of the unconditional love that holds you even when you feel most unlovable. And as you sit longer in the silence, you begin to notice another subtle shift, a fourth profound insight that emerges like a fragile sprout pushing through hard ground. The silence reveals the enduring nature of love beyond form. When the physical presence is gone, the silence initially feels like love's absence, a terrifying void where connection used to be. But the silence, if you listen carefully, begins to speak of a love that is not bound by the physical, a love that exists on a deeper, more energetic level, a love that is woven into the fabric of the universe, into the shared memories, into the impact that person had on your soul, and you start to feel their presence not as a haunting absence, but as a gentle, persistent energy, a feeling of warmth, a sudden, inexplicable sense of peace, a knowing that they are still with you, not in the way they were before, but in a new, perhaps even more profound way, a connection of souls that transcends the limitations of the physical world. And this understanding, birthed in the quiet crucible of grief, is a powerful antidote to the feeling of utter separation that loss brings, a secret whispered by the silence that love is eternal, that the bonds forged in this lifetime are not easily broken, and the pain, while still real, begins to transform from a searing agony into a tender ache, a physical manifestation of the love that remains, a reminder of the beautiful privilege it was to have loved and been loved so deeply, a pain principle that shifts from pain is suffering to pain is the echo of love, a difficult truth, but one that can bring a strange comfort. And finally, as you become more attuned to the language of the silence, you uncover perhaps the most vital truth, a warning and a promise. The silence is a gateway, not a destination. It is not meant for you to stay lost within it forever, but to pass through it, transformed. And if you resist its lessons, if you fill it with noise and distraction, if you refuse to listen, you risk getting stuck in a state of perpetual grief, forever haunted by the echoes of the past, unable to step into the future that is waiting for you, a future that will never replace what was lost, but one that can hold new possibilities, new connections, new forms of joy, and the silence prepares you for this future by stripping away the non-essential, by showing you what truly matters, by recalibrating your priorities, by deepening your capacity for empathy and understanding, by connecting you to the divine source that sustains you, and the pain, having served its purpose as a teacher, begins to subside, not disappear entirely, but soften into a manageable part of your story, a scar that marks where you have been, a testament to your resilience, a reminder of the love that remains, and you emerge from the silence not unscathed, but stronger, wiser, more compassionate, carrying the weight of your loss not as a burden, but as a sacred part of your being, forever changed by the quiet wisdom it imparted, understanding now that the silence after loss wasn't an ending, but a profound beginning, a sacred space where you were held, transformed, and prepared for the next chapter of your journey, forever listening for the subtle whispers of love and grace in the quiet spaces of your life. Because you now know the shocking secret, the deepest healing happens when you finally surrender to the silence and learn to speak its truth. If this message resonated with the quiet spaces within you, if it offered even a flicker of understanding or comfort in the silence you might be navigating, please consider subscribing to the channel. There are more whispers waiting to be heard.